Welcome to Her Imprint, part of the Impressions Exchange. I'm Denise Gustafson, your host. This podcast celebrates the remarkable women who are transforming the printing industry. We'll explore their journeys, from challenges to triumphs, and share the stories that leave a lasting imprint. Today I'm welcoming Kate Marshall. She's a sales manager with Signarama Pittsburgh. Kate, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. To get us started, can you give us a little bit of background about Signarama Pittsburgh?
Yeah, so Signarama Pittsburgh is relatively new, but not new as a company. We changed into a Signarama franchise at the beginning of 2024, but the company has actually been in business since 1942. My great-grandfather established it, then my grandfather took over, and now my dad is running the company, and I am in the fourth generation.
So I guess you really didn't have any choice but to go into the business.
I certainly had a choice.
Okay, good.
I worked as a delivery person for Tri-State Roofer Graphics while I was in high school. And then when I graduated high school, I took about a 10-year hiatus. I traveled. I worked as a bartender in the tourism industry. And then I moved back when I was 27. I was still bartending. And that's when my dad asked me to come back and work as an inside salesperson and the person that invoices everything.
What was it about the print industry that you decided to say, yes, let's do this?
When I originally worked there in high school, it was all blueprints, it was all small format stuff. So it was a little bit boring. And then whenever I went back at 27, we were doing foam core boards, we were doing wall graphics and window graphics, and the creative process really interested in me. Getting to see new buildings being built and the things being renovated was just really exciting.
So did you end up going to college in your 10-year hiatus?
I graduated with an associate's degree.
Okay. Did you really know what you wanted to do when you were
I had no idea.
Okay.
I think that I was a bit of a wayward child. I worked for cruise ships, I worked for ski resorts. I just really enjoyed that lifestyle. I thought that I would end up living in California for the rest of my life, but it got old too.
Understandable. So you have a little bit of wanderlust in you, is what I'm hearing.
I sure do.
So what was that aha moment for you when you said, this is it? Really, was it the creativity? Was there something else that really, like a moment that struck you that said, no, I think this is really what I'm meant to do?
Yeah, there was for sure. So in 2018, I think I worked on my first big exterior sign project, and it was for a company called Wiggle Whiskey. They're a local distillery. They sail all over the US. But they had the distillery in the Strip District, and they were updating their signage. And I worked with the owner, Meredith, and she was just like such a powerful, kind woman.
Mm.
And she really worked with me through the whole process. We did permitting, we did the variance hearings together, and seeing her in that role, and then also seeing her put her trust in me in this very large project that could go off the rails very easily was probably my aha change moment, because I felt really proud of myself in that moment.
Understandable. You got that off the ground and then you were in. No
And then
turning
I was
back.
in. Yep, I think I was very excited at that point.
Now, for you, obviously, you've been around print for a long time, probably your entire life, since the company was founded by your great grandfather, correct?
Correct, yes.
Great grandfather to your dad, a lot of males. I know for you, is leading the company something that you would be looking to do when it was time for your dad to retire?
I think at this point, yes. If you would have asked me a few years ago, I would have said no. And I think I would have only said no because I would have thought that I couldn't handle it. But especially in this past year, since turning into a Signarama franchise, my eyes have been open to the amount of resources that there are. There are so many people that are willing to help. There are so many people that have been in my same position that are now successful. So it's been really motivating to me. And I feel like at this point, I can do it. I want to do it. And so I'll just bide my time until I do.
Now, a question about that transition from an independent to a franchise. What made your father decide to make that change, to make that step into a franchise model? I'm curious.
One of the biggest reasons was we started doing a lot of work with companies that were asking us to do work in California or Ohio or Kentucky. And so Signarama has a huge network. They have 800 stores. We've already done work in California. We've done work in New York. We've done work in Florida. Other Signaramas have called us because they have jobs here. Having that US-wide network of installers was really important. So that was step one. But then once we were in, we learned a lot more.
Awesome. Yeah, I know for a lot of companies, they have to find those partners on
Yeah,
your own by
exactly.
networking or whatnot. But in that case, it's built in for you guys now.
It's totally built in. And they have so many like training seminars and they have so many peer-to-peer groups. You can go and ask any Signarama owner and they will like happily give you information, which is you don't expect that from a competitor. You can't do that with the people around you or the other printing companies around you, but you can do it with other Signaramas.
Yeah, honestly, as an independent, you'd probably have to try to find someone in another state, somewhere else that you're really not competing head to head.
Correct. Yep.
But this kind of gives you a much better base and a really good support system.
Yes, definitely.
Now, in terms of support systems, I know for you, even though you were around print for all of your life, print is still, it's a huge industry. There's a lot to learn. So I guess for you, what kind of support system did you have? Mentors? Did you have allies that really helped to bring you up to really understand all the ins and outs and the intricacies of the industry?
Probably my biggest support, my biggest mentor was my dad. He's been my biggest advocate. He's really allowed me to discover the industry. Beyond that, Dave, our production manager, he's been there for 13 years. I would consider him a bit of a mentor. He's taught me a lot. And I would say, yeah, those two people are probably my biggest inspirations.
How important was it to have those people to really help you?
Extremely important. I think that there is so much information that you have to learn in terms of medias and technology and workflows and all of that, that if you don't have those people to bounce ideas off of, you're just going to flounder. There's just too much information to take it all in from the internet or from a convention. So they were very important to me.
Now, it seems like it wasn't a formal mentorship, like I'm going to take you under my wing and train you, or was it?
It was not, no. And what's so funny, because like when I started 8 years ago, our company was so much different than it is today. So I feel like the company was learning as I was learning. We were entering into all these new capabilities and new things that we wanted to do, and we had to figure out how to implement them. We had to figure out how to make them efficient and make them work and make them profitable. But we were all doing it together. So there was nobody that could say, this is what you need to do. And I think if I would have been a part of the Signarama family at that point, there are people that I could have reached out to help with that process, which would have been nice.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, and for the company itself too, moving from a reprographics and a blueprint shop over into color and over into those larger projects, that's a huge turn for a company just in and of itself.
Yeah, it's worlds apart.
Hmm. I remember when I started in the industry back in the '88, I was working with Modern Reprographics, which is a magazine that covered reprographic shops. So it was all of those folks, and they were just starting to make that turn. And there's so much to learn and so much that they needed to know to really make that turn successfully.
And you had to make that turn because it's not the industry that it once was. Everything is digital. It's still a big part of our business today, but it's a fraction of what it was in the 90s. Yeah, so it's been interesting. It's been a lot of fun. I like seeing change. I like implementing processes. So that's been my favorite part of it all.
So, in terms of like professional development and training, are you getting that primarily through Sinorama now, or are there other avenues that you can explore that really help to continue to help you grow as you're moving along through your career?
I think joining the Chamber of Commerce's have been a big help to me, just getting to meet other people that are looking to grow their careers. Pittsburgh Business Times, just this week, they had this really great event called Mentoring Monday that had 20 really awesome women that are CEOs. They're established in their careers, and it was speed dating. So you got to sit down for a few minutes one on one with these women and pick their brains. Those types of things are so interesting, and I feel like they really help motivate and develop your own thoughts on something. Because sometimes you can't work through your thoughts to get to a conclusion. And so just to talk to that one woman who has had the same exact experience and her to say, this is what I did, was really helpful.
Even though they're in a different industry, it's very similar in terms of maybe some of the business things that you have
The
to know
struggles are the
as a
same.
business owner.
And usually it's people problems. It's
Hmm.
learning to work with other people. It's learning to manage people. It's learning to work with your customers. And those things are consistent across every industry.
So any kind of key tidbits that you learned from Monday?
So right now, my biggest hurdle is I am implementing a CRM and a sales lead tracker management. So I talked to a lot of the women on Monday about that. And I was like, how do I get the salespeople under me to buy into it? Because
Mm.
you have to use it. It doesn't work unless everybody's using it to the best of their ability. I got a lot of tips on just bringing in the most important person and having them tag team the rest of the people with me to make sure that they're using it. I learned how important it was for them in their company to have a CRM. So it just reinforced my position of this is what we need to grow.
Mhm. And yeah, you're right. If you have a great system and nobody uses it or people use it haphazardly, it's not going to help. It's actually probably going to cause more confusion because then some
Exactly.
stuff's in one place, other stuff's in another place.
Yeah, it's so important. I think I've done a good job of tracking my own work over the past 8 years, my own projects. And now I'm trying to teach other people to work in the same way I do and get away from pen and paper and lists and Excel spreadsheets and to have it all in one condensed place because it makes life so much easier when you're not going back through your emails or your notes from 3 weeks ago to try and figure out the answer. It's all there. I'm hoping that they join me on this journey.
Just have to make sure that they do and show them all the benefits of doing something new. But change is hard no matter what.
Yeah, I'll be patient. We have meetings weekly right now to try to get them all up to speed on how to use it effectively.
Hmm. And it's interesting that your mentoring Monday, it was all women too.
All women. Yes, it was great.
So how important was it for you to be able to sit with women CEOs as well?
I think that's the most inspiring thing. Like my story about Meredith with Wiggle, like seeing women confident and having gone through some of the same struggles that I'm going through right now with being questioned, and it's inspiring to me and it's motivating. And I think I look to them a lot for motivation and inspiration to become better myself.
Hmm. You talked about struggling with certain things. Women in general, I think, in the business or in the workplace, tend to have to fight a little bit more because there's maybe unintentional bias or there's microaggressions. Has that been something that you've experienced?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm not sure if it's because I'm a woman, if it's because I was younger, especially when I started, or if it's because I'm the owner's daughter and they perceive it as nepotism. So I have this trifecta of things working against me in terms of people believing that I know what I'm talking about. But yeah, anytime I'm in a room with clients and I'm there with a male coworker, they, without fail, ask the male coworker the question. And even if I answer, it's still the next question they ask them. And then I answer, and then the next question they ask them. It's a really weird dynamic. It's no matter how many answers I give, they still look to the person that I'm sitting next to for the answer.
How do you deal with that kind of awkwardness in some ways?
Just continuing to stay confident in my answers, making sure that I have the information that I need going in so that I'm ready to answer the questions. And usually that is the first initial meeting with a customer. If this is something that's going to go on for the next 3 to 6 months, and I do develop rapport with those men and they learn that I'm capable, but it's just the initial instinct is there to seek out the male advice.
Which has to be frustrating.
Very frustrating. Yeah. But honestly, it's getting better. I think as I enter my late 30s, I feel like the ageism at least has dwindled down a little bit, which is good. The other week, I was at a Chamber of Commerce event with one of our new project managers, and we were at this table and we were talking to another woman, actually, and we were talking about the company. And she's like, "Oh, I bet you're the boss." And she's talking to the new project manager, and she's, "He's your boss." And I was like, "Okay, no, I'm actually his boss. He's brand new, but okay."
It's just weird.
Very weird.
And I don't even know what makes people automatically lean that way either. I don't think it's something I can explain because I've heard it from a lot of women that happens multiple times in multiple settings. It's not weird to have women in leadership roles or roles of power, but in a lot of cases, people just don't expect it.
Yeah, it's strange. I wasn't around 20 years ago to see what it was like then. I'm sure it was a lot worse. But I really hope that we're making at least incremental changes to get better at that.
I think we are as a whole. There's more and more women, like I said, in leadership roles, in the C-suite. In many cases, I remember I spoke with one woman, is that some women didn't even have the drive to, or they didn't have the thought that they could achieve a certain role. Like they were content in administration or in a customer service or even in sales. And they didn't look to that C-suite or that conference room and said, "Oh, I can be there." And obviously they didn't do anything to push themselves to get there. But then the ones that did, that ones that thought, that had that confidence, they made it there. So I don't know, is it a confidence thing? Is it something else?
I think it's probably twofold, right? I think that the majority of people in life don't really aspire to be at that level. I think that men and women, there's plenty of people that are just happy to collect a paycheck and have a comfortable life. That's what the majority of people are seeking. So you couple that, and then on top of that, the confidence issue and the fact that you have to push and push and push for it to get people to listen to you as a woman. So it's like you already have the pool cut down by 70%. Those 30% of women that go out and try to reach those levels, you just have to be relentless, and that's a hard trait to learn.
Is that something that can be learned?
Yes, I can tell you that right now. I grew up socially awkward, introverted, weird. My first bartending job, I almost got fired because I didn't know how to talk to people. So I do think it can be learned. It's just some people grow up a little bit slower than others.
Definitely. And then with women too, you add on that other layer. Like you said, there's layers. The other layer of women, in some cases, they hear that ticking clock of, I need to start a family.
Yeah, and that's not unreasonable, right? I have a 4-year-old. I didn't hear the biological clock ticking, but I'm a mother and I understand it is so hard being a mother. Your kid is always sick and they have events and you have to take half days and you have to work from home. And everybody's just always like, why does she get to do that? If it's a man with no children or maybe a wife that takes care of the children, then they don't get it. They think that I'm taking advantage of the situation, but I'm not. I work extra hours to make sure that my stuff gets done. I
Mm-hmm.
work at night. I work early in the morning. There's a bias with that. And then so I can understand a woman in the workforce that has a kid, she comes back from maternity leave, and then all of this conversation around her is centered around her inadequacy because she is a mother. That hurts.
It does. Because honestly, being a mother is probably more taxing than what you do at work.
100, yeah, I had my son Connor during COVID. So everything was shut down. I was home alone with him, but I was also working from home. I can tell you being a stay-at-home mother was 100% harder than what I do at work. No doubt about it. Because you have the added stress of feeling guilty too, like feeling like you're
Mm-hmm.
not providing enough to them. So I'm happy he's in school. He's in a Montessori program. He gets so much care and so much love, and then he comes home and I give him all the love I can. So it's a much better situation not being a full-time stay-at-home mom for me.
Yeah. But still, a lot of women, especially a lot of young women, they have that, they come to that fork in the road. Do we go and be a stay-at-home mom? Do you do a career? Do you try to do both? How do you even balance it? I know for you, your son now is in school, so obviously that helps a ton with the balance, but
Yeah,
it
and
doesn't
it does
stay
help.
balanced.
It's still like a preschool daycare. So you also have on top of that deciding whether it's financially reasonable because daycare prices are out of control. It's a lot. I don't really have any good advice for navigating that. It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
You just do your best to get through it. That's as much as I can do is take it one day at a time. Each year it gets a little bit easier.
As they get older, yes, it's going to get easier. Eventually,
Yeah,
they'll be in college. It'll be easy then.
exactly.
But in
Yeah.
the meantime, you still have a career. And like you said, there's that guilt too, that am I not doing enough at work? Am I not doing enough at home? And in some ways, I think that's something that women deal with more than men, navigating that guilt.
Yeah. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just like something genetically in our emotions that make us feel more guilt. But I definitely see that with my husband as well.
Yeah, women, we are more an emotional being, I think, than men are. Not that I'm saying they don't have emotions, they do. But I think with women, we talk about that, we talk about feelings, we talk about those things a lot more. And I think we feel in some ways very deeply about a lot of things.
Yeah. I think the worry starts at a young age too. I remember just worrying about my parents, worrying about my friends, those feelings of wanting to make sure that other people are okay. That caretaking kind of feeling started early, and I don't remember my brothers ever feeling that way.
Yeah, that mothering instinct that
Yeah,
that comes.
yeah,
I'm married, but I don't have any kids, but I mother people.
yeah.
It's just one of those things. God forbid I get a pet, that thing's going to be smothered in motherness, I think.
Motherliness.
In terms of the printing industry for you, is there anything that you would love to see change, whether it's about women's representation there, the industry as a whole? Is there anything that you think would make the industry better?
I think just people helping people, not necessarily about gender. Obviously, I think that women supporting women is great, men supporting women is great. I think we have it a little bit harder, but just people supporting people. I think
Mm-hmm.
really easily people in higher positions forget where they started and forget how much they struggled and the mistakes that they made. And so they come down really hard on these people that are trying to find their way in their career. And instead of helping them, they put them down and belittle them. And I think that's probably present in a lot of industries, but I see it a
Mm-hmm.
lot in the printing industry. I work a lot with our competitors, like we'll team up on certain projects, and I see it within their ranks too. Just seems like upper management really doesn't want to see people succeed sometime.
And that's tough. Like you said, it seems like they forget of the struggles that they had. It's that bad nightmare that they just want to forget. And so they move on and they don't acknowledge it. But everybody has to go through those struggles when they're young and just starting out. They don't know everything.
Exactly. Yeah. If you didn't make any mistakes, then you weren't doing anything.
Mm-hmm. Then you really were not doing anything except maybe pushing a couple buttons and just listening to what somebody told you. You weren't trying anything. You
Yeah,
weren't moving outside of your comfort zone at all.
exactly.
And in a way, you're not growing either because then you're not learning anything.
You can't grow unless you're pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. You can't grow. That applies at the very
Anything.
basics with sports, right? You can't get better at a sport without pushing yourself to some degree. You can't get more physically fit without doing more reps. The same thing applies to your profession.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like a muscle, the more you use it, it's going to be sore. You rest it, but then you start again and you can go further the next time
Hmm.
because you're building and growing that as well.
Yeah, I ride horses. I do hunter jumper and show jumping. I've done that ever since I was 4. And I took about a 15-year break and then I started up maybe 6 or 7 years ago again. So I do that about 3 times a week. But even in my late 30s, I am a little bit more worried about hurting myself. But I thrive on that adrenaline of feeling a little bit afraid of doing the thing that I'm scared to do. And then you get past it. And it's such a good feeling. And I felt that in my career. I felt that in my profession. But I feel that mostly with horses. And that's the feeling that I chase at work too.
Mm-hmm. That excitement that you're pushing yourself, a little bit of fear, but it probably also helps to push you to go to that next thing, to reach out for whatever that next goal is.
Yeah, because as soon as you reach that goal, you have that rush of dopamine, which is really what you're seeking.
Definitely. One of my favorite questions, and it's the one that I like to finish up with, is knowing what you know now. So, your history, even your family history in the reprographics industry, moving into now color and white format, knowing what you know now of all the things that you've experienced, if you were just going to start today, just walk in the door, green is all get out, what advice would you give yourself?
Hmm. I want to say it's something really generic, be confident in yourself, but I know for a fact that I would not take that advice and use it. I would be like, ah, whatever. So I'd say instead of be confident, I would say just learn to educate yourself, learn about the conventions and all of this awesome information out there, and just start reading. Start reading, start educating yourself because that's how you're going to feel confident. You can't just flip a switch and say, oh, I'm confident now. I know for me, knowledge brings me confidence. I would just tell myself to really re-educate myself and learn as much as I can.
Network, talk to people,
Network,
read.
yes, absolutely. Thank you. That's a huge one. Creating relationships with other people in the industries that you're trying to work with, like the construction industry for me, the architects, the engineers. If I would have started doing that 8 years ago and continued to develop those relationships instead of 3 years ago when I started to get really serious about it, I think that I would have grown to a much bigger point at this point. Now I'm catching up, but I see the benefits of the networking and the continuing to reach out to the people that you've worked with just to say hello. Like, you don't have to ask them for work, but just being like, hey, how are you? It
Mm-hmm.
goes a long way.
It does. And honestly, what they always say is people do business with people, not necessarily, they don't do business with a company. So by building those relationships, it's going to help you in the long run anyway, because that's where really business takes place, I think.
Yeah.
Well, Kate, it was a pleasure chatting with you today. So thank you for spending a little time with me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for having me. It was great talking to you.
Thank you for joining us on this journey to celebrate and amplify the voices of women in the printing industry. If you have a story to share or know someone whose journey deserves to be highlighted, we'd love to hear from you. Together, let's continue inspiring and empowering the next generation of leaders. Until next time, keep leaving your imprint. This is Her Imprint. See you soon.